Welcome to HorsePlayer Happy Hour. I'm your co-host, Peter Thomas Fornatal, back with you from the Degenerate Flophouse this week, adjacent to the Little House on the east side. I was invited to come over by my friends at the Brentwood today, but weather's not so nice here in Saratoga. Let's just put it that way. And I decided that instead of worrying too much about wagering on this card, other than these last three races we're going to talk about here, that I was going to start looking ahead and talking about Saturday. But I do have some thoughts to share on the races we're going to be touching on in the show, and I can't wait to talk about them with the usual co-host on this program coming to us from an undisclosed location in New England. He is TV's Matt Bernier. Matt, how are things?
I'm good, Pete. Like you say, rainy up at Saratoga. I feel like just that the whole Northeast, I could be wrong, but some folks that I was around the other day, they had mentioned that it may be the wettest July on record from Boston to where I am in southern Maine, quite literally ever, which is crazy. We're up over like 13 inches of rain, which I feel bad for our folks out west who, are desperate for just a drop. And it feels like we can't get a day where there's not even any kind of a threat. So, you know what? Off the turf up at Saratoga, and we got to deal with the sloppy track. But I still think there's some interesting horses that we can talk about here.
No doubt about it. And beyond just the racing itself today, the whole concept is what we're here for. It's HorsePlayer Happy Hour, and it's the HorsePlayer Happy Hour Tour. First order of business, we have in just 9 minutes' time a contest that's going to be starting. It's a 6-race contest. Last 3 at Saratoga, first 3 at Del Mar, doing something different. We'll have the whole contest take place in the confines of the show today. I always enjoy when we can make that work. And you pay $20, and you have 3 ways to win your way into the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. Pretty much the best contest out there. It's a $10,000 buy-in. You could put that money up yourself, but why not try to win your way in? And again, 3 ways to do that. 1, you feed in with this $20 buy-in today by finishing in the top 10% of entries into the qualifying contest on Saturday. Then there are the 2 ways via the tour. 1, look, everyone still has a chance to catch our tour leader, David Browning, even if you were starting today, the way our rules work. But David Browning does have a fairly commanding lead for the moment, and that we'll look at that tour leaderboard later. But here's the thing that I don't want people to forget. There's another Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seat added to our prize pool at no cost to players. And to be eligible for that one, you have another 2 ways you can finish in the top 2 any week. So you could come in the last week, finish in the top 2, and be eligible for that. But to reward consistency and the people who've been joining us week after week after week, you can also finish in the top 40 on the tour who haven't already qualified. So that means very likely something on the order of a top 75 finish on the tour. And you can find the tour leaderboard over at the Breeders' Cup website. We'll give out that URL a little bit later in the show. And then you have a chance to basically be in an 80-runner contest for a $10,000 prize. And again, one of my favorite things, no cost to players. I've been thrilled with the way this thing has been playing out so far, Matt, over the course of the year. And I know you've been hearing some good feedback as well.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I think the turnout has been kind of indicative of what we were hopeful for. We've had a decent amount of folks that have shown up week in and week out. And to your point, it rewards consistency. But if you're someone who maybe you're a little bit lukewarm on getting into contests, or you're unsure of what your strategy is or any of that kind of stuff, you still have the opportunity to just catch lightning in a bottle. You run top 2 in any one of these contests, you qualify for the postseason. To your point, David Browning has a pretty large, healthy lead right now, but that doesn't mean that it's a slam dunk that he's going to win this thing and win the regular season BCBC seat. So still a long way to go, and we're a little bit light this week. We're only about 133 entries. Still got about 6 minutes until the first race of the contest.
All right, I do want to see that number get up there. One of the other great things about this, I feel like the old this is a cultural reference, Matt, that you won't get, but there are people out here who will remember the old Ginsu knives you used to be able to buy on TV, and the phrase was, "But wait, there's more." and the there's more is that $20 I mentioned. The house cut, as it were, goes completely to charity. Our 2 charities being the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance, who do that critical work of accrediting the aftercare organizations. Learn more about them, tbaftercare.com, and our friends and founding partners over at the In the Money Media Network, the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation. And to learn more about them, trfinc.org/players. We recommend you checking that out. So We're a little light on entries. We help us out, folks. Put in another entry. Either do a little bit of quick math, put some second opinions in, mix them in, play all the fours for all I care. But I do want to see that number go up. And if you don't want to do that, but you want to give these charities those URLs I mentioned before, both very valid ways if we want to go all telethon on you, tbaftercare.com and trfinc.org/players. So we've got 5 minutes before the first race. Matt, we'll talk about it. We'll bring that in. We'll talk about it in a minute. I want to mention another one of our partners who I'm very excited to be working with, our friends in Saratoga over at Walt and Whitman Brewing Company, also a cafe. You got the cafe upstairs for your morning fuel, and then you got the brewery downstairs for your afternoon and evening fuel. I'm going to make one of the happier sounds in the world here. And,
there it is.
Pop this Time is Money. this nice Helles that they make that I was enjoying last week, and we'll do so again this week with our pals over there. But let's dive in a little bit and talk about actually one more thing before we dive into these races. There's already people chiming in the comments, and we encourage that. We really rely on the viewers to be part of the show. That's some of the fun. You know, Matt, you can catch him on the Matt Bernier show, and he does a great job interacting in the comments and bringing viewers and listeners on. And of course, you know, for me, inthemoneypodcast.com, the contact page, or at Looms Boldly on Twitter, happy to answer your questions. But really the fun of this show is that back and forth with the audience. And I'm hoping with a little bit later start time this week, we can get even more people commenting. We've got Derek pointing out that he's enjoying the Triple H, the Horse Player Happy Hour, giving us props and pointing out that indeed it all goes to a great cause. Joe Solito got my Ginsu knife reference. Speaking of wait, there's more. R.I.P. Ron Pompeo,
yes,
the original as seen on TV huckster. I did not realize that he had passed. Legendary television figure.
Yesterday, I believe he was 86. Another sad death yesterday was the founder of ZZ Top.
Yeah, yes, the terrible.
Dusty, I can't remember his last name.
Is it Dusty Hill? Is that right?
I believe so.
Yeah, the celebrity death toll keeps on rising, and it's good to give people their props when the time comes. Happy to hear that Bob Odenkirk, who had a gnarly health scare earlier this week, is apparently doing better. All right, we got 2 minutes at Del Mar, Matt. I think we should talk about this race from a contest point of view, from a wagering point of view. Who are you interested in the spot?
Well, it was a tough one for me because I didn't think anyone was I don't want to say a standout. I'm going to kind of contradict myself. I feel like Flat Out Joy is the horse to beat in here. And at 8-5 from a betting standpoint, I really don't think it's a terrible price. Now, from a contest standpoint, though, while I think she is the horse to beat, I don't know that she's a slam dunk in this spot. And I wouldn't fault anybody that wanted to shop around a little bit. I think it's interesting the money that the inside horse is taking, Morning Addiction. Of the two, I still feel like Flat Out Joy is going to be the mare who, as they round that far turn, I just feel like her kind of call it the turn time, that interior fraction, I think it's just faster than what everybody else is capable of. So I went to the chalk in here, but I wouldn't fault anybody from a contest standpoint that wanted to take a shot with a bigger price.
I'll go head to head with you here. And I don't love my selection of number 1, Morning Addiction, but I do see a scenario where we just have an improving 4-year-old who's going to get better second time off the bench. The reason I can't more enthusiastically endure, I don't love the draw/pace scenario where I'm not sure if Morning Addiction is fast enough to clear and get out of the rail. And the rail, this meet at Del Mar, from pretty much every single day I've watched, which I don't watch as religiously as Saratoga, but I obviously watch plenty. The rail has not been the place that you want to be. So very much open to suggestions. If anybody out there has played one of the longer shots besides the two at the top of the market that Matt and I prefer, give us your idea of why in the comments. I'd like to hear some more cases for these long shots. I couldn't get creative. If you were playing this as a 6-race contest, Matt, would you I think I would probably just suck it up and play my pick and be done with it. But would you take the same approach with the 6, or could you spin a yarn, as it were, about one of the other numbers?
Well, I just couldn't get so stuck into one of the other numbers that I was convinced enough to go against her. I feel like Flat Out Joy for the reasons that I kind of laid out. I like her the most in here, and accordingly, it's only a 6-race contest. I don't know that you want to totally try to reinvent the wheel. I'm suggesting looking for a price. If you're not sold on the 2 shorties in here, I may not love them, but I think they are the horses to beat. Specifically, I went 6-1. So I would probably just take the chalk and say, let's hope we can get through this thing with some points on the board.
Yeah, that's my idea in a short contest as well. All right, we've got Daniel Gonzalez sharing. He's going to play that number 100 across the board. Sometimes in these short fields, across the board can be tricky because you're just the return you're getting on the show end is so little. I tend to, in a spot like this, be more of a win or bust player and reserve the across the board type plays for when there's a little bit more juice in the price. Jake Jacobs gives us number 5 against the Zip. So a flow upgrade and then cutting back. I will say on the racing flow numbers that Jake does, that can be a very profitable angle over time. We've got oh my gosh, I'm going to butcher this name if I'm not careful. Oiluj, I apologize. Give me your phonetic pronunciation so I don't destroy your name again. But anyway, on the number 3 horse, we've got a variety of different opinions in the comments here. We'll see what ends up happening. I did manage to clear with number 1. And Tom Espinoza points out that the reason that horse probably taking money, Pfeiffer on a speed horse. But I'm a little worried about, it does appear that she's stuck on the rail, but she might be able to get off that rail. And as they turn in, Matt, it does look like it might be, is it going to be a match race between our 2, or could the
7's making up a decent amount of ground? You just wonder, it's a bit of a sustained bid at this point. If you want to go with the momentum, the 7's the one that probably has it. I still would take my chances with my horse from here, even though I'm behind you. And I think you're going to end up being the one that prevails.
The way the track's been playing, I would have agreed when you said that. I mean, the 3's, it's interesting because the rail looked bad when the 3 tried to make a run on it, but the 1 spent plenty of time on the rail and was able to get the job done under Jessica Pfeiffer there. Jockey Jess with another winner out at Del Mar, putting that weight break to good use. I will say something else that I do think in general, the weight break can be a more significant thing with cheaper stock, horses that don't like to pass.
I'm not someone who goes deep into the weight piece, but to that point, I agree with you. I feel like when we're dealing with lower level claimers, especially conditioned lower level claimers, 5 pounds can go a long way.
All right, good stuff. Daniel gets to cash all 3 of his bets. Hopefully that will lead to a pleasant evening. Well, I'll tell you this. We say this on all the shows really quick because we got to talk about the Saratoga race. But if you do pick up something from us anywhere in our In the Money programming, please consider giving to our charity partners, Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance and the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation. 1 minute to post at Saratoga. What do you think in here, my friend?
Outside for me, Anna's Fast, the number 9, 6-1 is more than playable. I like the way this one's trending. It comes out of a race most recently, a 50 claimer claimed from Wesley Ward in now for Rob Atras's barn. That barn is rolling along right now. Past 3 years, first after the claim, winner last out, 7 for 20, 15 in the money with a 2.5 ROI. Look, the Chad entry can win either of them. They're both probably the best horses in here, but with the recency and the speed that Anna's Fast has, I say break on top, Johnny, and go on with it. So the 9 for me.
I like the case for number 9 and would be one on my short list who I would definitely rather have than the entry in the spot. I put number 6, Regal Retort, on top. This is a situation I like. Coming out of a race, chasing blue time form US fractions, now in a spot where the pace looks like it could be fast. And I could even tell you a yarn about number 8, Kansas Kiss, as an alternative. I just really like Rosario for this one. When patience is a virtue, in a spot where I see that being the case, I upgrade his runners. And this one also I thought moved fast, moved early into a fast pace last time. Might be a little bit better than the bare form. I might do a little boxing of 7, 8, 9 here, Matt, and see if we can play this entry out of the exacta and get something going on. Anybody out there, feel free to holler at us with your pick before they get too far along in this 8th race at Saratoga, the 2nd race of our contest today. We'd love to hear your selections as well. But yeah, I think you might be right. The 9 going right to the lead could be this is one 50 yards into the race. I might be wishing I picked.
Well, and it'll be very curious to see how fast they do actually go early on, because I go through the race and say outside of the 9, Malibu Mischief's got some speed. Wouldn't be surprised if she's forward. Stand for the Flag, I don't know, is a confirmed burner, but probably won't be too far off of it. I just kind of look at it and think from the outside, I think that draw is going to be beneficial. And I like horses that are in form right now. And while Chads are probably the best, the most talented, maybe you can catch them off the break here and take advantage, although one of them broke like a shot.
Yeah, it looked like the 1A went right to the front there as part of this 3 to 5 entry, but I don't hate at all where Anna's Fast is. Caught some money late. In the end, I did go 6, 7, 8, 9, just a lazy little box exacta to try to get the favorites out of the number. We'll see. Ambitious plan, but we'll see. Got a bunch of other votes for the 9. John Gasper, by the pleasure of hanging out with for a minute last weekend, points out the Saratoga record and the affinity for the wet surface. Daniel, who caught the nice winner in the first race, coming right back and betting number 7 with a little bit of the house. It's not really house money. Once you're not playing with their money. Once you win it and it's in your pocket, it's yours. But it's still an irresistible broadcasting cliche. Unfortunately for all of us trying to beat this entry, it certainly doesn't look like the entry is going to be beaten out of the exacta with this horse going strong on the lead.
I don't know if horse is going to lose.
We do have number 6 coming on we might get out of the exacta. Yeah,
I was going to say you're out of the top 2.
It's not with the horse that I didn't use the 4 in second.
64.
That's funny. I thought for all the world that horse was going to hang around for second. At least I saw the Regal Retort run. So that's an example of being too clever by half. I have my top pick at an acceptable price, but rather than betting to win, I decided to get greedy and goof around at exactas. That price should have been enough for me to do at least a token win wager. I blame being distracted and broadcasting while gambling. What is that a viable excuse to you?
Sure, why not? I'm curious. So for the level, these are pretty decent horses, but they went 21 3, 44 3 to the half. I mean, they were cooking out there. So not a total stunner that the horses that were forward packed it in the way that they did, and you had a few horses rally from off of it to pick up the pieces and get the job done. 8-1 over 12-1. That'll certainly change the complexion of the contest for anybody that had these. And good shout by you. You had mentioned Regal Retort in this spot as one who might be able to take advantage. And sure enough, again, the pace just more or less melted down. Maybe you want to give Motivated Seller a bit of a round of applause first off the bench. This was a pretty good effort.
No doubt. I'm cutting out those kind of fractions at that level. This is a horse that can clearly be competitive at it. We'll have to see what happens next time. But I mean, I talked about the house money cliche. There's no cliche truer that pace makes the race. And we saw it there. And I'm just mad at myself for not being able to capitalize in my pocket. But hopefully some other people out there were smarter than me and got a little piece of that. Because I mean, 8-1, pretty generous price in the end. Joe Solito doing well with that 1-6 double. Somebody got to be off to a very good start in this contest. In a couple of minutes, this is a great chance to update the leaderboard, and maybe we'll look ahead to some Saturday action with 20 minutes to race number 2 at Del Mar. And we got a nice comment from Nancy, getting a partial entry to the BCBC through the qualifier last year. Oh, and getting another one as well. Fantastic to get a good finish and pointing out all the things we like about it. But part of a great contest, and you get to qualify it at a low price point, not just one for the well-heeled. I mean, it's great if you're well-heeled. It doesn't matter. Anytime there's money added to the prize pool, you're going to want to be participating. But the fact that we can get players who don't necessarily have the bankroll to just plunk it down and give them a chance to compete toe-to-toe with some of the biggest names in the contest game. That's definitely a big part of what we're all about here at HorsePlayer Happy Hour.
Well, and I mean, that to your point, just because you have the ability to buy in doesn't mean you shouldn't be trying to get in for a cheaper number. I mean, that's just common sense. But then it does afford the opportunity to the folks who don't have the ability to just plunk down 10 grand and say, I'm in, I'm going to play. Gives you the chance to at least get involved in. It is a totally different muscle. I know we've talked about it in the past, but when you go from whatever your comfort level is, let's say you're a $10 bet or a $20 bet or even a $50 or even 100, it becomes a totally different ball game in the BCBC when you're forced to get out of that comfort zone, and all of a sudden the denominations go up exponentially depending on what you're trying to do. It's something that I don't know that you can replicate that. I've tried to do it. I've done it in the past on my own. I did it during the reality show where you just try to mirror a contest and play it for, a tenth of whatever the buy-in is. There's still a difference between saying I'm going to go all in with $400 or say I'm going to go in all in with either 4,000 or even, let's go more than that, 14,000 or anything like that. That's a big difference. It takes some time to get used to. But again, that's the beauty of hopefully you can get in for that cheaper number and you can decide what your end game is once you get into that position.
And I'll also hold firm that Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge, even if you're not, these days, you're going to probably have to really fire to win. You look at some of the plays that Marshall and JK made last year, but you could go there and play just a slightly steroidal version of how you were going to play anyway and look to whatever 2.5x your bankroll, and you've got a great chance to get an NHC seat if that's something of interest to you. And we always talk about how the NHC, an experience I feel like any horse player should try to have at some point. I would, rather than dealing with a lot of the other qualifying options, I think trying to get in on one of racing's biggest days through the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge makes a ton of sense. There's more than one way to approach the BCBC. Certainly, if you're an expected value person, having a win or bust attitude makes sense, but there's a lot of other ways to try to crack that particular nut. We see the leaderboard up there on the screen. We've got 5 players who've gone runner to start this contest off, and Joe Solito, as promised, had that 1-6 double. Matt Letexier is currently listed in second place. Brad Anderson, a former Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge winner, he's been supporting us every week. Michael Cavana, we've seen that name a bunch. And then look who's there with a share of first. And oh, by the way, currently in 10th with his second entry at 25, David Browning. The good run continues. I love the fact that we'll get to follow it all the way through this time around and see how our man shakes out. Jake Jacobs is there. Pete Dressens is there. Kyle King is there. Nancy Spence, who we just spoke with. Ernie Hay Jr., Matt Miller, all kinds of names. Derek Vogt, who's joining us in the comments today as well. Lots of familiar names. Great to see him. How many did we end up with in total? Do you have it in front of you, Matt?
I can effort. Stand by. We ended up with all told 140.
Okay, 140. It's okay. It's
little light.
Yeah, it's not what I've dreamed of. I was more excited by the 180, 200 weeks. But I mean, I think there's a lot going on, and I think there is some bandwidth consideration. Tom chimes in. Never participated in tournaments until Triple H came around. Fantastic. He's hooked, and mentions what you mentioned, Matt, that it's a great way to hone your horse playing skills. And this is a plea I make all the time. Encourage your friends and others to play in these. I know in theory it hurts your chance of getting the big prizes, but that's not what this is about entirely. It's also about this community of horse players and supporting our charities.
Well, and to your point, also going back to sort of what your end game is, if you are in the BCBC and you're someone who maybe it's a little bit of unfamiliar territory, I'll just kind of I'll give you my way that I looked at things last year. I fed in through one of these qualifiers on a Friday afternoon, effectively got in for a $56 piece because I was an early qualifier into the afternoon one. And I got into the BCBC, and for the duration of the 2 days, I more or less tried to just hook up doubles. I wanted to be alive into horses that I liked in the following race and just sort of Dutched it accordingly that I would end up weighting them equally. Well, unfortunately, I wasn't alive in many of them, but I got to the very end of the contest and said, well, I can still get out of here with more than I came with. And I just stacked it accordingly from the turf into the classic. My real opinion of the weekend was authentic. I liked him. And no, I wasn't up there with JK or Marshall or anybody toward the top, but I went from feeling kind of bleh about the whole weekend to walking out with 5,500 or whatever it was. And when you put that into context, that I basically got in for $56.
It's a score. Well,
It's a score. Yeah, it may not be six figures, but it's better than a stick in the eye. So
100x is 100x.
I was more than happy about that. And you get to take in. I think there is something too about the idea, and that's the beauty of a live money contest, that you never really feel like you're out of it. If you really wanted to, if I wanted to, I could have tried to cold deck a try in that last race.
We've seen it happen. We've seen it happen in these live
I'll use who I was up there in the green room with at Keeneland last year, my partner Eddie Olczyk. When he won the Pegasus betting challenge those few years ago, it's exactly what he did. He hit a cold trifecta in the Pegasus World Cup, and that's what vaulted him to the top of the leaderboard. He was down to his final, I don't know, $1,000. Maybe it was a little bit more than that. And if you're feeling ambitious and it doesn't make a difference to you, there's nothing wrong with that. And that was a very havable trifecta in the Classic last year. For me, I just wanted to try to get out there with more than I showed up with, and mission accomplished. So I didn't end up winning, or I wasn't really in contention, but $5,000 is still $5,000. It's not chump change. So
no,
I think you can always go into it with a different attitude, even if you feel like, boy, I don't know if I can really push the button when I need to try to win the whole thing. Doesn't mean you can't walk out of there with a lot more than you came in with.
That's where qualifying really, really comes in handy. And when it comes to the Breeders' Cup and it comes to the National Horse Players Championship, horseplayers.com is the place you're going to want to take a look at and do that. And then, of course, I know you're a big believer, Matt, also in using the sister site, Horse Tourneys, to win into some of these other live bank contests. And let me just tell you, there's a few really interesting ones coming up that I think we should give some love to. We've got Kentucky Downs. They're doing this turf series across there. I think it's 3 contests across there, 6 dates. I believe qualifying is going on Horse Tourneys already for that. That's one to take a look at. The Little Red Feather contest, Saturday of closing weekend, and Del Mar have other contest activity as well. That stuff's worth checking out for sure. NYRA right here, Whitney Day. That's a big event. Not sure what the qualifying status is for that. I should have looked this up before I started.
I don't believe there's a NYRA qualifier on Horse Tourneys.
You've got to just buy your way in for that. That's $3K.
Correct.
There's certainly, and let me just tell you, NYRA are our partners, but they're missing a trick there. I mean, you certainly should be when you have a big contest like that. I mean, it's so fun to be able to open it up to get a bigger amount of participation. But another one I'm really excited about, Canterbury. With their, they've been known for this Dog Days of Summer contest. They've changed it up a little bit where they've gone super Breeders' Cup centric. That's going to be in September. I'm sure there's going to be qualifiers for that if they're not scheduled already. I'll get all the details, and I'll do a better job of this little upcoming live bankroll contest plug in future weeks. But I'm considering heading out for that one, Matt. Canterbury is supposed to be a jewel of a racetrack. The weather in September is supposed to be so nice out there. And something to look forward to, trying to do something a little bit different, essentially like a super qualifier to the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge.
Yeah, the live contests that I'm taking a look at right now that are available as far as feeders are concerned, Canterbury, Keeneland, Kentucky Downs, and there are some with an ADW out there if you're looking to get involved for some of those contests as well. So, and that's not even including, the basically Horse Tourneys, their kind of staple, their main event, which would be the big one. But that's not as far as I know, unless the format's changed, that's not a live money contest. We're talking specifically trying to feed into those live money events. Those are the ones right now that I'm seeing off the top of my head. And I'm sure, as is the case, and you always want to keep an eye on that, there are new ones that pop up left and right. And I think tracks are seeing the intrigue in well, for a number of reasons. Not only do we take care of the handle and the horsemen and so many different layers to things, but I think it really gets people excited about the idea of, rather than just playing for a prize pool, I can play for a prize pool and I can make a giant score on my own. In a weird way, your expectation or your potential is even greater than it would be for any other given contest.
I think that's very well put. And I like that idea in general of, if you qualify your way in, you could honestly just play whatever you were going to play anyway. You might as well do it within the context of the contest in case you get lucky. Maybe you set aside a portion of your bankroll to take some cold shots to really get your number up where you're going to participate in the prize pool. But if nothing else, you trade some dollars and you walk out with a multiple of what you had to put up to get in there. There's a lot of different ways to approach it. Joe makes an interesting point that maybe our maybe I shouldn't, give up on the idea of the first three on these Thursdays. If the slop at Saratoga maybe depressed entries a little bit. Well, I think this is a concept worth trying. I feel like a little bit later in the day might be good once folks get used to it. Because a lot of people, East Coast anyway, you get a chance to finish your workday and not have to multitask, as it were. We've done so many different formats in this contest so far. We've done the 3 tracks, we've done the Saratoga 6-pack, and now this sort of modified version. Do you personally have a preference, Matt, or they all have pluses and minuses?
Well, I mean, I think there are pros and cons to all of them. I'm partial to either this style where it's basically 2 tracks, and at this time of year, the 2 main tracks are Saratoga and Del Mar, or a old school, to your point, Saratoga 6-pack. I prefer kind of those two, but today is a perfect example because, to Joe's point, it's why I didn't play in any contest today, because I typically on a wet track, I struggle greatly. It turned me off enough just because I know what to expect. It's one of those things that I don't try to think that all of a sudden things are going to be different. The track record on a wet track has not been particularly good. So for a day like today, knowing that you've got 3 races out at Del Mar where it's gorgeous, that at least kind of, softens the blow a little bit, as opposed to having 6 races at the spa that are just, completely in the slop. Some people love it. I drown in it. So that's, I think it's in the eye of the beholder.
You mentioned something that's so important that we'll pause on, and then I think we should take a look at the Grade 1 Bing Crosby tomorrow race with potential major implications for the Breeders' Cup Sprint. But when I wrote a book many moons ago called 6 Secrets of Successful Bettors, the idea was to interview all these professional gamblers, largely professional horse players, and see what traits united them. If folks remember the famous Stephen Covey business book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the idea was to do that, except for degenerates. And one of the traits that united the people in that book was the ability to handicap not just horses, not just races, but themselves. And that's something, Matt, I've seen you do time and again, from looking at your records, from paying attention to this stuff, and from being reflective about it, to know, turf sprints, maybe not so much. Off the turf, maybe not so much. And then you have an opportunity to really fire when the odds turn in your favor.
Yeah, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. Those are the 2 instances that more or less are, I draw a line through them for the most part. I'm not saying I don't play at all. There are a couple of horses I like at Saratoga. We just had one who got burned up, but this race coming up, I do like a horse. It's a wet track. I'm going to take a shot. Maybe it's not quite to the level that I would on a fast main track, but you combine that also with, to your point, my beloved turf sprints. Those are always my favorites, and I recognize a weakness that I don't have a good eye for that. It's not the same as how I feel with a 1 1/8 or 1 1/4 turf race with the high level, the high quality runners. I feel pretty comfortable being able to spot things with certain horses. That's a comfort zone. Turf sprints off the turf, neither of those am I particularly comfortable. In a contest, you kind of got to play what's given to you, especially in a format like this. But push comes to shove, if I'm going to make a bet on something, I'm going to punt on both of those for the most part.
Let us know in the comments what your strength and weaknesses are as players. You can give one, you can give the other, you can give both. We'll share that with the audience as we, again, strive to make these broadcasts interactive. Got 7 minutes to the second at Del Mar. I think we have time, Matt. Let's chat about this Grade 1 Bing Crosby. You tipped your hand a little bit off air that you have a strong opinion in this race, and I'm very curious what it is.
We were on one of these shows last year leading into the Kentucky Derby in September, and there was a horse running at Churchill, basically getting out of California for the first time. His name was Vertical Threat. And I said, I know what my eyes are telling me, that the horse has got proper ability. Now, maybe a mile won't be his cup of tea. Maybe going up against that caliber of runner at that point in his career would be a little bit too much. And sure enough, he showed speed and just couldn't quite hack it. He came back, took advantage of a soft spot for a lot of money in November at Mahoning Valley and just won for fun. I believe in Vertical Threat. I think the talent is legitimate. Maybe it's not CZ Rocket good. You can go through, and there are a couple other horses in here who I think are kind of fringe contenders. I do believe in Brickyard Ride on the outside. That speed is legitimate speed early on. But to me, and I believe the morning line somewhere about 8-1. I made Vertical Threat 4-1. I believe in him, and I'm all in on him on Saturday.
It's a good case that you make. What are we hearing about how this runner is training off of this kind of layoff? I would want to get a little bit of confidence potentially before firing too heavily, just based on how the horse is doing. That's enough. That's enough of a question for me that it gives me a little bit of pause.
The only thing I can look at, I don't have any word out there or anything like that, but he has not missed a work since the middle of April. So fitness there's no excuse for fitness. I just don't believe that. He's been working for 3 months. If he doesn't fire, it's because he's not good enough. It's not a matter of he's coming into this on the heels of 2 works and he's been gone since that November run. I mean, I feel like if he doesn't run, it's because he's not good enough. It's not going to be a fitness thing.
You see some of these workouts just looking at the tab. I mean, that's a nice work 2 back, July 17th. And you go back to it's a San Luis Rey work. They call them in, who knows? But I mean that it catches the eye. Also, the June 26th work, second of 49, 47 and 2. And then you also have the fact that Richie Balta is certainly a trainer who can get them ready off the long layoff. I mean, one thing I'll sometimes look at in this situation is not just the percentage first off the layoff, but the percentage first off versus second off. Sure. And in a funny way, like especially with a good trainer like Baltus, when his numbers don't really improve second off the layoff, I think it's like 17% versus 18% in the sample that I looked at. And that tells me they come back to the races fully formed. Whereas if it was a horse, you see some trainers and they're 10% and then second off they go 20%. And it's like, okay, well, clearly they're using the race to get them to peak fitness. So, I mean, I like your idea here. This was a very fast figure, as fast as the commercial figures came back for Vertical Threat. I know there's some private figure makers who have an even bigger number in this spot.
I haven't been able to. There's another product that I use, HTR, but you can't take a look at that until about 24 hours out from the first race. So I haven't looked at that. I have a feeling that it's going to be pretty good, but we'll wait and see. But to your point, the commercial numbers, they're enormous. They would make him arguably the fastest horse in the race.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. I mean, the one thing is looking at relative pace figures, I do wonder if he'll be able to clear with the likes of Brickyard Ride in the mix. So I would definitely, my backup idea would be to go for the best closer. And I would imagine we have to agree probably that's CZ Rocket. And I would definitely want to have something. I would want to have eggs in both those baskets, I guess is what I'm saying.
At this point in his career, I mean, CZ Rocket, he's a legitimate, say what you will about the older sprint division. He's one of the best, if not the best. You could make that case as well. They tried the 2-turn thing. It didn't really work out. I think he deserves to be the favorite in here. I just don't know how short I would want to go on him for that reason. He's probably not going to be up there pushing things. And I do understand your point about the pace situation. I know we're getting ready closer to post anyway here for the second at Del Mar. I don't think he's fast enough to run with Brickyard Ride, talking about Vertical Threat. I think he's probably going to have to sit maybe in that kind of pocket position and work out some sort of trip beneath Joe Bravo. Maybe that's not going to be his cup of tea, but I'm willing to find out at the right price.
It'll be fun to find out. Very compelling case for Vertical Threat in the Grade 1 Bing Crosby. All right, Matt, let's talk about this second race at Del Mar as part of our contest, the third race as we turn for home. I'm just going to go first because I'm ridiculously boring. I found Scottish Star very tough to beat. We've got an undefeated runner who beat a field of 16 in a Grade 1 last time, in the right hands to do well off of this break, and might be just too much for them.
Yeah, look, that's where I landed in here. Not super creative. Richard Mandel is already talking about the Rancho Bernardo, which is a Grade 2 or a Grade 3 on August 20th is sort of the end game. Hopefully we get through this spot. Apparently she's been ready to go for quite some time, but they just haven't been able to find the race for her to run in. Here we are. I expect her to run well. The only other horse, if you're trying to get kind of cute, I thought Road Rager was a little interesting. We talk about not necessarily pace figures, but the way a race plays out. When Road Rager is forced to chase Gamine, I expect her to back up at the end of the run because Gamine is just otherworldly from a talent standpoint, going one turn. Road Rager, this is a considerably softer group, and who knows, maybe Scottish Star is a freak of nature as well. But Road Rager, I think, is at least one at 12-1. If you're not convinced that, the first time North America, she may need one before we see her best, maybe Road Rager is one that can get a little bit, cute with it 13-1.
Compelling case for a long shot in number 5. but we both think that number 4 is going to be awfully tough to take down in this spot. That's Scottish Star. Let's catch up on some comments. We were talking about live bank stuff before. Derek points out that Fauner Park has a live money contest where first and second get entries into that Canterbury Dog Days of Summer contest, $200 bankroll and a tiered entry fee. That makes me want to holler at somebody over there and see if they want to do something to promote that event. That's pretty cool. August 7th and 8th. Tom, happy that we have the West Coast races involved today. MVP chimes in that MVP does well on sloppy track days at Saratoga. He says he thinks it's because it happens so often. We do shout outs too. Shout out to Henry. Glad you're watching. Lenora, who we've heard from before. Oh, that's Chris. I jumped ahead. We'll do Lenora's one first. Telling us all to enjoy our happy hour. We have another case from Tom for the long shot number 5. That'll certainly make things change up on the leaderboard. Chris says outside the favorite, tough to separate, but was a little interested in the 3. Had some notes, but now second off the bench. So another long shot there. And then John, who's with you, Matt, as well. Road Rager, class drop, second layoff.
I just broke through the gate.
Oh, boy. So that's the number 2, a lovely gray, who we'll see. That didn't look great. That did not look great. We'll see, though. The vet will check this out, and we'll see if we're going to take him out and reload or if maybe that wasn't as bad as it looked and the horse can be reloaded, but definitely seemed to get very agitato there. Yes, Derek points out that Chris Kodlak would be the guy to talk to at Fauner. Had the pleasure of doing some work with him back in our place with the letters days. We did some seminars with Chris. I think that was for Remington Park when he was over there. But yeah, that's a great idea, Derek. We'll send you a commission if this pans out. It may be we may pay you in beer. We'll see how that goes.
Where do you land on this scenario right here? If you liked the 2, what is
I
what do you do?
Want to be historically. I think I want to be scratched. I think that even when they're physically okay after breaking through, I think mentally, I mean, you'll see them win once in a while, but I feel like it messes with their minds a little bit. And you don't, would you agree that you don't typically see a peak effort after that kind of incident, even though the horse is apparently fine because they're reloading and they do a good job in horse racing these days with that thing. But I would probably cancel my bet if I had.
I was going to say, for me, universal across the board, I dump it. And I say, you know what, I'll save that, whatever the win wager is or whatever the case may be. If the horse beats me, so be it. But for me, it generally across the board, I'm drawing a line through them and tossing them.
Yeah, I feel like in aggregate, that's the right move. Doesn't mean the horse can't win here. And it did break with alacrity after that issue, but it's quite a scrum up there. And I would still be, if I'd canceled my bet, I wouldn't want it back from here, even though normally I'm all about and love being forward. But you got the favorite breathing down your neck. You got the 1 holding tough on the inside. Have to be a hell of a run for the 2 to get in from here. I mean, the 4 appears to be traveling.
Yeah, I was going to say, and for me, it's more, and by the way, the 6 just had to stop bad. 6 has nowhere to go, but is plenty of horse. I'll be curious to see what the Mandela horse does from here. Because again, they've already kind of alluded to a graded stake being the future. I would hope she's going to open up here if she's that level.
Yes, you would like to see that.
She may not even win.
No, the 6 is finishing. We're going to see. This is going to be an interesting little class test. If she can re-engage and win from here, that would show me something. But it ain't going to happen. It comes 6-4. What did you think of that winner?
Well, I mean, this is a horse for Michael McCarthy. Haven't seen this one since early December. Predominantly a 2-turn horse. Well, the 2 races anyway that McCarthy had. She went 2 turns. She ran in the Bayakoa against decent runners. The 1-turn races, I would say, were meh, but those were early on in her career. She was a 2-year-old at that point. So this wasn't one that I necessarily had circled, especially at the price, 3-1. I could have taken it or left it. But the bigger thing for me, though, is, again, you go back and watch the tape. Had she had clean run, I think she probably wins rather comfortably. She had to stop pretty badly, I'd say about 3/8 to go, and eventually found a seam and was able to go on with it. I don't want to, poo-poo the Mandela horse too badly here. This is her first start since October of last year. And, she's kind of had to start and stop. They've wanted to run her for a few months now. But having said that, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more here. If you're potentially a graded stakes level, I don't want to say star, but someone who's going to really make some waves, and maybe she still will, but I would have liked to have seen a little bit more.
It was a very nice run from the winner, and a good example of the turnback angle that we talk about so much on the shows. And sometimes you can really see those turnback angles. I mean, just looking quickly back at Stellar Sound's time form US figures, you see that red coating going longer. Sometimes those horses who are running inefficiently fast on the front end going longer, they get a pace in front of them and they can relax, and even in this case endure some legitimate trouble and still find a way to finish. I didn't necessarily see it on the breeding that this one would be better going shorter. Tap it, usually you think about distance, right? But a very nice run from Stellar Sound, and a good job from Michael McCarthy. It's not easy to get ones out of the Baffert barn and then they run better for you than they did for him. So good stuff from Whitey out there in California, who is maybe I saw on time for him. He had a little cold notation for the Del Mar meet. Not so cold after that nice win in the second at Del Mar. We got 2 minutes to Saratoga on the sloppy sealed track. Where did your eye go in here, Matt?
Well, the key for me in this race is how's Arad going to ride the favorite right now? What do you think now? Because I really like Foolish Ghost, the 7 for Ray Handel and Joel. I know the 7 needs the lead. I don't think the 7 can win without having things all his own way on the front end. So if the 5 is aggressive out of there, Joel's going to need to make a decision. I personally think Foolish Ghost is just naturally faster, and I don't want to get cute. You know what? If it costs you in that final half furlong, I really don't care. Just make the front, and we'll go from there. The wet track doesn't bother me, despite the fact that the horse is 0 for 7. Has hit the board a few times, and I don't think was as good as he is right now. Comes into this in good form. BT Loves a Fight, who in that most recent start anyway, he came back and earned an 86, and he was 2.5 lengths back. So I think the figs stack up competitively. 9-2 is fair. I wouldn't want much less than that on the 7 Foolish Ghost.
I would like, what do you think now, to take a stalk and pounce approach. I made this runner my top pick in this spot simply because I felt like the last 2 races, there's like, I don't really want to call it a class drop, but it's almost a class drop going against some really tough open company foes back in against New York breds. At 5-2, I can't say there's any value there, but what do you think now was my technical top pick? If I was making picks publicly, that's the one I would have had on top, and I'm still tempted to stick with that idea. But I will mention Captain Bombastic as another turnback type in a new barn, possibly suited by the cutback, price horse with a chance. So I may once again not bet my top pick to win, but mess around with your 7, my 5, and also the 9, Captain Bombastic, to try to get somewhere up into some vertical exotics here in this spot.
I know you had said that you didn't want to call it class relief. For what do you think now? I'll call it class relief because I think if either Bo Liam or Witzel were in Saturday's Vanderbilt or the Bing Crosby, I think they probably win. I think you can make an argument that those 2 right now are the best older, and I say older. Bo Liam is he a 3-year-old or 4-year-old? I don't remember. But speed figure wise, they're 2 of the fastest sprinters that we have right now. So yeah. I will call that class relief here. Now in against, I believe these New York breds, or these are state breds going 6.5. I mean, this is certainly class relief. Doesn't mean that it's going to work out necessarily, but he's not taking on any Bo Liams or Witzels in this spot.
No, that's a totally fair point. I mean, Bo Liam, those figures have both been crazy. He is only 3.
He might be Matoli all over again.
Yeah.
Really? Yeah, I mean 106 in his second lifetime start. I mean, he's just unbelievably fast. And I was all over Witzel that day, and I thought at the quarter pole, I go, he's winning by 3, and he just, Bo Liam just kept finding, and I don't think it was a matter of Witzel not going by. I think it was just Bo Liam dug him very, very gamely.
Yeah, and Witzel came back to run great. Let's see what else we got here. Daniel has the 8 across in this spot. Chris, referring to the Del Mar race, says it was a nice race, had this pegged for a comeback race with route races in the plan. That's an interesting idea. regarding the Mandela runner. And Derek talking about the beer payment, usually what he gets when helping golf buddies work cattle. So that works perfectly for him. I love it. Good stuff. I also love the depth and breadth of professions we get here in Horseplayer Happy Hour. It makes me think of the paddock bar where we have, we have college professors and construction workers and lawmen and some who live outside the law in the mix as well. I imagine it's a similar mix of people here on Horseplayer Happy Hour. They are off at Saratoga for race number 9. Let's see what Irad chooses to do on this favorite. What do you think now? Looks to be trying the stalk and pounce tactics. And interestingly, Wow Brown managed to make the lead over Foolish Ghost. Do you think Foolish Ghost is going to press the issue here or be content to sit right off?
I didn't see this. I didn't see the one having nearly enough speed to really be up in that position. So they're either, well, in 21-4, it's not like they're going slow. I don't know what the track is playing like today. I haven't, seen are the times typically fast, but we just saw a comparable opening fraction completely come apart at the seams in that last race. Having said that, sitting off a 16-1 shot, I can call Foolish Ghost a need the lead type. I'm hopeful kind of by default if the one stops, maybe they won't, but I'd like to think you've got a pretty significant jump on everybody else.
I also think it's better when you're a need the lead type sitting outside, like your horse is here. It does look like it has the potential to fall apart here in the lane. Is that Irad going for the split between the two front runners and finishing with
my boy Tate?
Oh, that's my boy Tate. That's the 3.
We still got a horse. Come on, finish.
Yeah, your 7 looks terrific. Where's this? Is this the Bombastic?
No, we're clear.
Running to come up into second. I think that's just going to end up being a nice pick by you, and it's going to come at 7-3-4 there in race number 9 at Saratoga.
That is an example of and I don't know how well I did explaining as it was happening. I still think he's a need the lead type. It just helps when the horse you're sitting off of stops.
Yeah.
It's not like all of a sudden he's just going to stop because the other horse stops. I'm saying he needs the lead if there's other legitimate speed in there that's really going to battle him. I don't think he'll go by. I mean, he hasn't shown that through 33 lifetime starts that he would go by. When he has the opportunity to sit off a 15-1 shot, who stunningly, I mean, I'll give credit to the connections. I know the horse finished up the track. This horse has never shown that kind of early foot down on the inside to break like that and go right to the front instead of 21-4 at Saratoga against Stakes Company. I mean, that's a legitimate early fraction. And but summarizing the point, Foolish Ghost, I still think is a need the lead type. He just happened to be sitting off of a horse that was going to stop no matter what.
Yeah, it was a great trip as it turned out. And I still wouldn't be in a hurry to bet Foolish Ghost back as one of 3 speeds drawn inside.
Yes, agreed.
It can be, of course, sometimes you can get a great trip there too, where you flop outside and get that easier, cleaner position. But yeah, it worked out very nicely. And I think that's also a good point there that you made, is that not all speed is created equal in that spot.
I think there's more to it than just, oh, well, this is this is this. And again, I'm probably guilty of not fully explaining that, but to be honest, I didn't think that the one would be the one doing it. If it was the horse that you liked out there, I would have had some pretty serious concerns because I don't think he necessarily would have gone by.
Yeah, it's funny about pace. Its importance is paramount, but I think sometimes people think there's like 3 or 4 pace situations and don't think beyond that, when it's far more complicated than that in a number of different ways. The different internal dynamics that really are the levers that make races won or lost. And the more time you could put into thinking about them and trying to design it in your head and think it through, as opposed to just being, okay, it's a fast pace, so that always, a certain fraction was fast, so that always favors the closer. Well, not necessarily. It can be a lot more complicated than it looks at first blanch sometimes. All right, we're 4 of our 6 races in. We'll do a leaderboard, and then I think we should look ahead to some of these Saturday stakes races at Saratoga, Matt, especially the sprint, the Vanderbilt, the Grade 1. I had a funny only a horse player could relate to this thing happen. So Susan, for my birthday, which is next week, but they're traveling for complicated reasons, got me this wonderful dinner with my buddy. We actually talked about him on the Saratoga Lifestyle Show. Chef Dan Spitz is going to be cooking for us on Saturday night. And then when I learned that the dinner started at 6:00, I had to like not fully reveal. My first thought was, oh man, I don't think I'm going to get to see Essential Quality in the flesh.
Happy birthday.
It's okay. It's okay. We'll talk about that race too, the Jim Dandy. Again, I'll stay there for the Vanderbilt and I'll watch them as we're driving out to Washington County or wherever the hell he lives. And it'll be okay. I don't have to see him. I'll go out in the morning and see him in the flesh. It'll be cool. But I figured other horse players might get a laugh out of my thought process on that one. You know, I mean, I could live with missing the Bowling Green. I kind of wish I could have stuck around for the Jim Dandy, but it's okay.
I feel like, again, we can all relate to that at one point or another. Maybe, you know, whatever the case may be, the number of times I've had glares sent my way from across a table when we're out to dinner or we're with friends or whatever, and I go, it's just one race. That's all. I just got to see how it goes, and then I'll put it away. I promise. And that's, you know, it's the nature of the beast.
Life with a horse player, right?
That's it,
Life
right?
With a horse
That's it.
player. It's part and parcel of the entire experience. All right, good stuff. I think it'll just be a minute here. We'll look at these. We'll look at the leaderboard. Hit us up with any other questions. We'll definitely have some time in this little window before our next race at Del Mar to get to any of those that you have. Whether it's about just general handicapping stuff, contest stuff. Oh my goodness. Did you see the kerfuffle this week, Matt? And I hesitate almost to bring it up, but the kerfuffle about the NHC and a certain contingent of players, you know, I'm just going to say it, moaning about the potential for having to wear a mask in the ballroom and this and that. And all I kept thinking about, he was joking when he said it, but Marshall Graham said, you know, he hopes a bunch of people don't come because it's going to increase it. Everyone who doesn't show up increases his percentage chance at that $5 million bonus for winning the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge and the NHC. One other thing on that, from my point of view, let's wait for all the facts too, because Keith Shamblin said on the Steve Bick Show that the Vegas rules, the Vegas City rules aren't necessarily the Bally's house rules. So before, much to Marshall's chagrin, I'm going to say, before you go canceling your trip, you know, look into all the facts. But maybe the larger point is stop whining and wear a mask.
In the same vein of like, and it's just the way that the world is these days, where it's, and we're guilty of it from a racing standpoint, it's rapid reaction. Well, things are typically a little bit clearer and a little bit more well thought out when you take a few minutes and say, okay, well, here's what is being talked about, rather than just immediately fire something out there. You take a step back and you really look at it all. And who knows, maybe your opinion doesn't change, but you've at least given it a moment to sort of settle in and really be able to put some decent thought to it before you come out with some sort of a statement. So I'll leave it at that. To each their own. Everybody's got their own opinions and stuff. I don't want to go down that path because I don't want to get people yelling from one way or the other or whatever it may be. I'm sitting back here. Guess what? I didn't qualify, so I'm not even in. I'm sitting back out here up in New England saying, you know what, you guys do what you got to do. But I just think there is something to, and again, we are guilty of it, but I think kind of by default because of the job. But the rapid response, the rapid reaction is not always I don't want to say in hindsight the right or correct reaction, but it's just kind of the way the world works today. You got to just immediately fire off whatever your first thought is.
Yeah, well, it's sometimes better to think a little and let things play out, and we'll see. I'm not. We need to get some confirmation on the stuff Keith was saying on the Big Show. We're going to do an NHC preview show, so we'll have info. More info about what the current state of things is, just so people can know what they're getting into and dress accordingly. Because I've heard Tom just chimed in the comments, but I've heard conflicting things about what that county-wide mask mandate means once you're in the casino's property. So we'll have to get the full information on that. Okay, I think we have a leaderboard. So why don't we look at that, Craig, if you are at hand, and then we'll and then we'll start looking ahead. We got 10 minutes to this race at Del Mar, so we've got time to do everything. Joe Salito in our comments and in first place on the leaderboard, adding to that total in right now a theoretical dead heat. There's tiebreakers involved now, so he is the legit number one if it ended now. But Brad Anderson right there, Michael Cavanna, Mark Stovall, Aaron Reed, David Browning still in a very nice position, though he hasn't really built too much after those first two races. Terry Smith, Michael Domabil, who's been a regular participant in these games and has also been doing a great job covering Colonial Downs for us over at InTheMoneyPodcast.com. Colonial with the new schedule, definitely a track a lot of players are going to want to be following early in the week. And then Matt Latexier. Matt, if you're listening and I'm butchering your name, please let me know about that because I don't like doing that as one whose name gets butchered frequently. Shall we talk about this race at Saratoga, Matt? The big grade one on Saturday?
Yeah, why not? I think all three graded stakes races have appeal for different reasons up there. So yeah, let's dive into it.
All right, let's start off by talking about the grade one Vanderbilt, which goes at 5:03 on Saturday. I'll still be in the house at that point. All the more exciting for me. We've got the return to the races of a Breeders' Cup winner in Whitmore. We've got Whitmore and CZ Rocket on each coast. We've got Firenze Fire, New York hero, not a horse who's historically done his best work at Saratoga. I think of him as a Belmont horse for course, but on the figures, you'll have to be taking a long look at him. I'm interested in a runner on the outside in number 9, Special Reserve. I'll get to my case on that one in a minute, but let's throw it back to you. Do you like this race as much as you like its West Coast counterpart, the Bing Crosby?
Well, and I'll throw it right back to you. I'm curious, what's the thought process behind Special Reserve?
I like the trip this horse is going to get. I think speed figure, pace figure wise, Special Reserve is going to be in really nice attack position. And I feel like the big names in this race, I'm just not 100% sure their form arrow is going to be pointing in the right direction. So I think you might see a little bit of vulnerability at the top of the market, whereas I don't have any question about which direction the arrow is going with Special Reserve. I know a 5-year-old, but a 5-year-old who's improved significantly, and I think it's real improvement, and I'm expecting that improvement to continue. So that's my case in a nutshell. And I think the horse will be a minimum 4-1 and maybe higher than that.
This is the kind of race when you first look at it and you see all the names, you go, boy, this is one where maybe you need to go 3 or 4 deep to make sure you get out of a situation, or you can kind of, zig when everyone else zags and find that one horse that you're going to say, we're living or we're dying with them. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, Special Reserve is the only horse I want in here. And it's no disrespect to Whitmore or Firenze Fire or any of the other runners in here. I just think the combination of the trip, to your point, that Special Reserve probably pulls, breaking from that outside. I think you're going to be forward, but maybe not outright on the lead. Maybe you're a length or so off of it stalking, and you make your move rounding that far turn. From a speed figure standpoint, I have little doubt that right now he's the fastest horse in the race. And I'm with you as well from a price standpoint. It's one of those beautiful things, whether you and I are right or wrong, we're probably going to get the price that we want because of the presence of Whitmore and Firenze Fire minimum. Never mind anyone else that's in this field. I made Special Reserve 5-2. Oh, and I got a smoke alarm going off. I don't know if you can hear that. She's upstairs. I'm not too worried about it. Special Reserve at 5-2 is the only horse I want in this race.
All right, good stuff there. If you
I'll mute while I'm not speaking.
You mute while you sort that out. We'll get that. Make sure. But first of all, make sure everything's okay. We don't want. Okay, you're 1,000%.
I'm not worried. And
Okay.
she's already stopped.
There you go. That's
sorry about that.
No, it happens, and it's no big deal at all. Let's talk for a second about Mischievous Alex, just as another horse. I mean, I think we've given in passing, but our thoughts on where the other runners at the top of the market are. Is the turn back possibly something that can wake this runner up a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it certainly could. I have a difficult time figuring out what I actually think of this horse, because the Carter, while it came back very fast on the buyer scale, it was okay, reasonable enough from time form standpoint and reasonable enough from some of the other figures that I use. But I don't think that was a particularly good field, despite the fact that Mind Control came back and won that Nehrude on 4th of July weekend down at Belmont Park. I personally look at him and say, you got to prove to me against the best of the best, or some of the best anyway, in your own division, that you actually belong. And until he does that, he just does nothing for me. And he's another one who's probably going to take some nibbles. I don't think he goes off in that 3-1, 4-1 range. Maybe he's 5 or 6, but he takes enough play. I think that helps the horse that you and I like, Special Reserve, kind of float up maybe a little bit more from the number that he actually should be.
I can buy that for sure. I was surprised to see Mischievous Alex listed as low as 2-1 on the morning line. I would play against at that price. Just not sure exactly what we have in him. Our fates are aligned here in the Grade 1 Vanderbilt. With
and everyone listening, I don't mean to interrupt. I got an apology from upstairs, so we're all set. We're all set.
That's okay. We're used to all manner of interruptions on our programming, and people expect nothing less. We've got 4 minutes to post at Del Mar. Let's talk about this race, and then maybe we can look at one of the other Saratoga races before it goes off. But I don't want to give short shrift. We're doing, between the two of us, we're doing pretty well today. So let's see if we can keep the momentum going here in this upcoming race at Del Mar. What do you think?
I was not sold on anyone who had run prior. I just think many of the previous runs, they're fine. They could possibly win, but no one has done anything so superior that I'm shaking in my boots. So I started looking around to some of the first-time starters, and I really became intrigued, despite the fact that he's very cold on the board, or she is anyway. The 2, Big News Coming, was the one that I was most intrigued with. Tim Yachteen's numbers, when you just look at them at face value, they don't look particularly strong with first out of the box. The raw number for first-time starter is 4% in the daily racing form. You dig a little bit deeper, past 4 years, dirt first-time starter maiden claiming events, 6 for 29 with a 382 ROI. The workout apparently 2 back on July 16th was with a horse called Scream and Shout, who has run twice and has earned buyers of 51 and 62. I think those, oh, and by the way, apparently Big News Coming ran considerably better in that workout than that other horse did. So I'm looking at it thinking, if we can get somewhere in that low 60 range at 18-1, and I'm not sold on anything anybody else in here has done, I got to go that way. So the 2, Big News Coming for me.
I would be frustrated if I were participating in this pick and pray contest. Pick and pray contest, of course, where you put in all your picks before the race goes off. So sometimes you're left using the morning line as a guide. I would have been licking my chops to bet number 10, So Very Smart, listed as 8-1 on the morning line. Currently, your 9-5 favorite. It's a pretty basic case. This is a horse who showed speed against Better. I typically absolutely love this angle now going into these the state bred claiming level. The crowd didn't fall for that 8-1 morning line though, and that does give me a little bit of pause. I the kind of thing where if I were betting this race just to have some fun, this would still be my pick, but I would just reduce what I was planning on betting if the horse was any kind of number. And unfortunately, in contest terms, if you thought you were getting 8-1, you've got no recourse. You're just stuck with the 9-5 price. It's one of the things I don't like about, I love the pick and pray format for a lot of reasons. And I think for serious contest players, especially day in, day out, it's a very good format. And things like this tend to come out in the wash, but it's the kind of thing where if you could lock in the price a la fixed odds betting, it would be much more appealing to me from a game / wagering standpoint. Obviously, all the juice and the price gone there at 9-5. But do you think the horse is live? What were your thoughts on this runner?
Well, I kind of have to take this as legitimate signal, not just because of the 8-1 morning line, but this is a horse who, Doug O'Neill got the runner 2 starts back. The first start back, they stretched out and went to the grass, and now all of a sudden we're going to turn back to a sprint on the dirt. I have to look at this and think that there's some signal here to be bet as heavily as she is. The dirt start in her career debut when she was with Kristen Mulhall, that probably puts her right there. If you think you get any improvement from that, she probably is if not right there, she might be the most likely winner in the race. 9-5, I agree with you. That's aggressive. I don't think she has that kind of edge on this field unless the tote's telling us something and she's ready to fire. I would be more inclined to shop around at that price knowing that, you know what, she could certainly win, but there are 9 to 5 shots that are going to come around that I'm a lot more confident in than maybe this girl is here in this race.
How do you typically walk that line when there's a horse that you like and is a clear pick, and you would have put on top in any paper picks that you made, etc. You might have even told somebody in the morning, "Oh, I like this horse today," and then you see a price like that. How willing are you to get off that horse when it comes to your actual wagering?
Oh, very much so. I mean, I think it does still boil down to probability and how likely you think the horse is to win, especially when we're talking about it from a dollars and cents standpoint. Unfortunately, for folks who are in the unenviable position of having to put picks in days in advance, it's one of those things that you just kind of have to hope that it all shakes out. Your pick is in there, it's documented and printed that you have picked this horse. But from a gambling standpoint, that doesn't mean that my dollar has to go there. And I know that may sound a little bit, maybe it doesn't sound great, but I think when push comes to shove,
it's exactly right.
It's still a game of playing the odds and putting things into perspective of how likely a certain event is to happen. And maybe if she was half of that morning line at 4-1, you're going to sit there and say that, roughly a 20% chance of getting the job done. Yeah, I'd buy into that. At 9 to 5, we're up into almost the 40% range. I don't believe that. So
It's hard to make it.
I would be content saying, you know what, if she wins, I'll take one for the paper. And it doesn't matter that I can pass and wait till the next one.
As you talk, it makes me realize how much public handicapping and TV handicapping has ruined me, because I've gotten to a point where I will look, it's different. If I list 3 horses or I have 3 on a short list and one gets hammered, I will obviously say at these prices, you got to do this and maybe cover your exacta with the favorite over these. But in a race like this where one leapt off and that's all, that's what I liked in the race. My typical advice, and I know it's not the best advice, but I do couch it, and I'll just say, look, this isn't a good price. If you just want to gamble, if you want to yell, a lot of people watching on Sky or whatever, they want to yell at the TV and have a bet. They're not looking at it like putting money in the bank.
Right.
And so I'll say, you know what, just make whatever your minimum bet is, do that. But your answer is much better and more correct.
Well, I just think it is always need to keep that into perspective. And I mean, I remember talking with some folks when I was still in New York about what's the appropriate way to go about explaining things or talking about it from a number standpoint. And yes, you don't want to talk over people's heads, but you also hope that you have an audience that is aware fundamentally of what the end game here is. You know what I mean? And I think that's the way that I tried to approach any of the stuff that I ever did.
That's very smart. And I mean, that idea, we can't emphasize it enough, that the right answer to so many things depends on what's your goal in this game.
Correct.
If your goal in the game is to make money, you stay away from this beaten horse at 5-2. If your goal is just to have fun and yell at the TV, it's okay. It's not, you know what I mean? There's so much judgment around from the EV crowd. But boy, that was a smart performance from that winner there, Matt, at Del Mar. That was pretty impressive, really, for the level.
Yeah, I was going to say, and this is I have a difficult time reading these types as well, because the most recent run from a 5-year-old mare making her 3rd lifetime start was coming from Pleasanton. And I never really can tell how that form is going to translate. Class relief, yes, you go from maiden special to maiden 50 here. Is it really class relief, though? Or is it kind of a lateral move just based on the company that's typically up there in those races? The big thing that stuck out, though, was we already had speed, and now you've added blinkers, and you would think you're going to break a little bit more alertly. I wasn't totally all in, but if you had this filly, or mare, I should say, at 5-2, she made 5-2 look like easy money, according to Pete Aiello.
I think maybe a hunch play for the Tottenham Hotspur fans out there, getting off at the Seven Sisters tube stop and walking up to the Brickyard before a match and having a few pints, an experience I've enjoyed on many occasions. When I lived in North London, it was in the heart of Arsenal country. So as a contrarian jerk, what did I do? Of course, I started rooting for Tottenham. So I zipped up there. I zipped up there a few times.
I was going to say that season's getting ready to kick off here in about 2 or 3 weeks.
It's unbelievable how quick it comes up. That's great. Chris giving you props for never missing a beat with the smoke alarm. Howard chiming in. Wow, he likes Mischievous Alex a lot more than we do. And then he asks about what race would make sense for Life is Good if he's healthy. I think it's very much of an open question. We've seen so little of him. On figures, if he returns fully formed, isn't he a threat in whichever race he chooses to go in?
Yes, no question about it. I mean, if he comes back to that horse that we saw in the San Felipe or whichever race that was, he's a player in whatever race they choose to go in. I mean, if it is the sprint, I think the interesting thing will be, at least if they do come back in the Al Jerkins, which it sounds like that's the plan. That's at 7/8 of a mile. I think in all likelihood, you'd probably be looking at that saying, do you really want to turn him back to 6? You're going to stretch him out from there. I would think the next logical step following that would be, and this is pure speculation, would be the Pennsylvania Derby at 1.125 right down the road. You can keep him here on the East Coast, another 3-year-old restricted race. If for whatever reason he found 1.125 trying against good 3-year-olds, you always have the option to turn him back. And you can either go to the dirt mile if you think the 2 turns is still something that he's better at as opposed to the 1 turn, or you can turn him all the way back to the sprint, which we've talked about it. That division, little hungry. You know, you've got some exciting prospects, but nobody that's an absolute standout. I would think that everyone involved with the horse is thinking classic right now. That would be my assumption.
Yeah, that sounds completely reasonable. You analyzed that very well. We had a question about Lexitonian, who's running in the Crosby. Did we give that runner any count? This is a horse I've liked on a number of occasions. Didn't really pop for me when looking at this race, but I think if I squint, I can see it. Had a trip in the Met, and you go back to Lexitonian's best races. This horse isn't out of it at a price, is he?
No, look, you liked this horse, I think, in this race last year. And he was a good number, and he came from 100 out of it and just missed out on that nose. He doesn't owe me a dime. I mean, I had him in the Chickalang as a 3-year-old at 20 to 1 or whatever it was, and he got the job done. He's very quirky. He doesn't change his leads more often than not. He has shown the ability to go out there on a fast pace or come from 50 out of it. I don't know. I thought the Met was really bad. The Churchill Downs, I'm going to stick to my guns. I know you've had some decent performances out of it. I don't think it was a good race. When you've got 7 horses in a blanket finish in a dirt race in a grade 1, I just can't get behind it. Prior to that, though, you know, his best races really came middle of last year when he was running low to mid 90 buyers. I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to talk you off a horse that'll be 15 or 20 to 1. He just didn't really get the juices flowing for me in this spot.
It was actually more complicated than that. It was because remember, he was meant to run in this race last year.
Yes.
And then he got scratched at the gate or dumped up, like something crazy happened. And then a week later, he went out to the Crosby, which was the spot that I liked him.
That's what it was. You're right.
And he was beat, but it was just a funny thing. This year, of course, those 2 races on the exact same day. Just kind of a funny thing. Couple more comments to get to. Trish, you owe an apology, Matt.
I'm sorry.
Trish's dog who went nuts with the fire alarm. Tom gives you props for not running outside. Howard chimes in, where there's smoke, there's Matt handicapping. You did have a couple winners earlier, so that makes sense. And then we had a comment that I missed, tipping a horse that did not win in the last race at Del Mar. 4 minutes to post. Let's do 2 minutes on the Jim Dandy. This is one of those where I think some people would do the Jim Dandy in 2 words, those 2 words being essential quality. I want to tell you a story about Weyburn. Now, maybe I'm being influenced a little bit by Richard Migliori, who was a guest on Live at the Brentwood. I'm doing live shows at the Brentwood every Saturday in Saratoga. We encourage folks to come by, get a chance to hang out. One Matt Bernier will be my guest Labor Day weekend, if that's still on.
Yes, sir.
10:30 a.m. We post them as podcasts if you can't go. But I was just talking to Rich about the 3-year-old division. He had been talking about how impressed he'd been by Weyburn and how forward he'd come in the mornings when he'd seen him recently in Saratoga. There might be a pace angle here. He might be the fastest early. And essential quality, obviously, he should win. But I mean, I think he's going to be 2 to 5, if not shorter. And it's a little bit of an odd spot, cutting back from 12 furlongs. The speed figure you run at 12 furlongs isn't often going to be the speed figure you run at 9, and not the goal. I mean, I think it's pretty clearly a prep for the Grade 1 Travers in 4 weeks' time. The thing about this is I will have as much money bet covering essential quality over Weyburn as I have bet on Weyburn, but I think the 6-1 in the morning line looks short on Wayburn. I think this horse is going to be 8 or 10-1. I know you priced this race up, Matt. What price did you have Wayburn at, and what's your opinion in this year's Jim Dandy?
Kind of in line with what you just laid out. I made Wayburn 9-1. Basically, I have him as the second choice at 9-1, along with Masker Parade, who we'll dive into in a moment. I've told you, I mean, I drafted him in our Triple Crown draft. I think Wayburn's a good horse. I think he continues to kind of get underappreciated in the big picture. I think he does have a tactical edge in this race. I'm not convinced, despite the fact that he was that close to Mandaloun. I think that was more Mandaloun getting goofy on the front than it was Wayburn actually making it that close. Now, it's not a bad thing that Mandaloun came back, and just say what you will about the actual result. Here in a 102 buyer, he ran a good race.
Well. Yeah.
He ran well, absolutely. Wayburn, I think, is interesting. Put it this way, I'd probably put him second behind Essential Quality. I believe Essential Quality's morning line is 1-2. I made him 1-2. I pegged him at 66% of the time. And I know that sounds silly getting into the minutia, but you have to. It's got to add up to 100.
It doesn't sound silly at all. That's the name of the game.
I made him 1-2. Hot Rod Charlie's performance just kind of flatters the number. To your point, I recognize he's probably not going to run back to a 109, and this wasn't the goal. There's a part of me, though, that looks at it almost in a positive light, that the plan was to wait for the Travers. I have to assume he must be kicking the stall down if you're going to run him back in this spot. And if that's the case, I know the 1 1/8 isn't a problem. And maybe I'm being unkind to the bulk of this field. I just think there were light years behind him. There's a case to be made that Essential Quality is the best horse in training, period. And he would need either, I think, a bias or to completely not show up to lose this race.
It's you make a compelling case, and we're going to both do very well if this exacta comes Essential Quality over Wayburn. Let's talk about this race at Saratoga with 1 minute to post. Malibu Anthem, the 15, 7-1 is okay on this horse, I think. Bet last time off the layoff and didn't break. So with a clean getaway, why can't this horse move up in what isn't exactly the toughest situation off the turf in the nightcap at Saratoga? What did you like in here, Matt?
Well, I was super disappointed that it came off because I liked the horse had it stayed on the turf. The horse is still in the race, wicked happy. Not nearly as happy now that we're on the main track. I think this one would have actually had a big chance on the turf, despite the fact that he was 0 for 15 or whatever it was, 0 for 16, or she was. It sounds silly, but you just default to the MTOs. I mean, the horse was meant to run on the main track. These other horses are turf horses in theory. So for me, I could go to the outside. I could see Malibu Anthem certainly getting the job done. The only other one that was a little intriguing was the 11, Strong Point. I think Strong Point's most recent start at least indicates that this one fits well on a track that may not be fast. And from a price standpoint, 4-1, I don't think that's anything to sneeze at. I think 4-1 is very fair on this horse. So I'd be looking at the 11 or the 15 in here.
I think I might play them both against the field, just using Dutch principles, betting a bit more on the 11, so we win the same either way, and try to end up on a winner here on this episode of HorsePlayer Happy Hour. Couple of more comments. Joe gives us props for the Brentwood shows. They're fun. It's a little bit different. We do a little handicapping, but I'd say we've been doing 30 minutes, and 20 minutes is maybe even more, pretty evergreen. And then we bring in some questions about the card. And even those, though, have an eye toward the future. For example, Richard Migliori talking about Wayburn, and had a great chat with Acacia Courtney last week. Got Sean Borman in the hot seat this week. It's a little bit old school because it's a podcast, but we're going, it's almost modeled after the old, like, later shows with Costas, where it's one guest that. And you get a chance to get a little more in depth. It's not the free flowing JK+1 Mark Maron, chat about your favorite type of pizza kind of thing. It's leaner and meaner, but we have a lot of fun. And both, obviously, we love both of those different formats. It's different strokes for different folks and different time crunches. But that show, especially because we don't have much lead time, we bang it out on Saturday mornings there at the Brentwood. And if you're in town, please come and join us. One more from Howard. Even though the Travers field will be much tougher due to the longer distance, he thinks Essential Quality is more likely to win that race than the Dandy, a total prep. I think you can argue it either way. I mean, Matt makes a good point. Brad Cox wouldn't mind just leaving the horse in his barn and bringing him out to fire his best shot there. There's probably a reason he's running, and I doubt it's that he's short of fitness, but obviously, given the odds and everything, Howard, I more or less agree with you, but I'll give props to Matt's opinion as well.
I will tell you my opinion over the years and just sort of in the modern landscape of the way these horses are campaigned has changed. I don't know that there really is necessarily a prep, an air quotes, traditional prep anymore, because they run so infrequently. I don't know that you want to just burn a shot just to burn a shot. I think if you're going to run the horse, they're ready to fire, because I mean, in the grand scheme of things, what good does running in the Jim Dandy do for this horse if he's not ready to win? And I get it, the Jim Dandy on his stallion page is never going to be the thing that sticks out, but it's another graded stakes race. It's a big purse. I've kind of changed my opinion of what we used to think of, or in prior days would think of a prep. He needs it for fitness, get him tightened up and ready to go. They run so infrequently these days. I don't know that I really buy. The only kind of prep that I buy into is one that, like a Life is Good, in theory, is going to go through, because he's been gone for months and months, and it's off of an injury-induced layoff. He's in new hands now. Get him a one-turn race before you stretch him out. With a horse like Essential Quality, I don't know that I necessarily believe in the idea of a prep anymore. I really don't.
There are certain horsemen who we know do it, and when you see them do it, you pay attention to it. But then there are certain horsemen that there is, you think about Todd Pletcher, you think about Chad Brown, you think about Brad Cox specifically, as some kind of pretty runs by them all here in the slop at Saratoga. Looks like this 15 should get second anyway. Didn't do me any good the way I played it. But the modern horsemen, I tend to agree. Their training style is designed to protect winning percentage in a way that doesn't really allow for preps except in extreme circumstances like what you're going to see with Life is Good. And even then, would it surprise you one bit to see Life is Good come back fully formed?
No, not at all. Not at all. I think of it more from a standpoint of distance-wise, that he may need that one. I mean, look, he can go out there and win, and he still might actually need one before he goes out to 9 furlongs or 10 furlongs. But with a horse like Essential Quality, he's already made. The only thing that will further his value is winning races. So if you're going to run him in a spot like this, I'm going to take it as I'm going to be under the impression that he is ready to run, because otherwise, can't only bad things happen if he races? I don't mean to get like morbid, but if you didn't think you needed a prep or anything like that, you just kind of just work him in the mornings, have him ready to go and fire when he's ready to go. I think this is a sign that he's going to fire a shot on Saturday.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. And like I said, I'm going to cover massively with him. I just decided to use my theoretically halfway clever Wayburn idea. Richard Migliore, one of the people, when he talks, I listen in terms of how horses are looking in the morning, and then seeing on paper, Wayburn's supposed to be in front, and we'll see. It's not like Brad Cox is going to be too mad if the horse comes flying late and is only second. No, so.
And to your point though, let's not gloss over. I like Wayburn. You like Wayburn. I think he's a good horse. I don't think enough people have given him sort of his due, mainly because he hasn't danced the biggest dances just yet. I think he's actually pretty good.
He's a good horse, and certainly still your Queen's Plate future favorite. Yeah. Mig was making it sound like, he was very confident about the horse's ability, to the point where he was saying he might be dancing bigger dances than the Queen's Plate, which is, $1 million race. But I get it. If you're in the business of making a stallion, it doesn't help you the way that some of these grade ones they run in the fall here in the USA are. We will see. It's going to be interesting. I can't wait to check it out. It is dark as night here in Saratoga crossing line. This is 6:20. We're supposed to have light for 2 hours and 20 more minutes at least. Hopefully this is the end of this gnarly weather. I think it's supposed to get better for Friday, Saturday, Sunday, which is a good thing, obviously. And to be honest, selfishly, if you have to punt a day at Saratoga as an analyst, punt a Thursday. Sure. Because you get this big. I feel like I still have a lot of form to look at tonight and tomorrow, but I'm just so much farther ahead of where I would be had I been in the paddock bar all day schmoozing and drinking beer, you know?
Not to give it short shrift, because they just went official up at Saratoga. We'll have a leaderboard. The Bowling Green, I don't know what the condition of the turf will be. Just a real quick thought. I thought Moon Over Miami got a little intimidated in the Man of War down on the inside, which doesn't seem like it makes a ton of sense, because you look at the head on, and there were at least like 3 paths down on the rail. He tried to go through and he just kind of idled. I think this is a good spot. However, when I read I believe it was Dave Grenning in the racing form, this horse was scratched on 7-5 due to wet going. They considered running in the grade 1 UN. They had found an allowance race at Belmont Park that didn't fill. By default, this is where he lands. That doesn't sound overly confident to me.
That's not great for a 7-2 shot.
Correct. I wouldn't take him at that price. I thought Rock Emperor looked like the old Rock Emperor when he won that N2X most recently. My concern is the distance. I think he's more of a 1 1/8 or 1 1/4 type, although this may be a field that he's just better than. So I was torn between those two. I'm going to let Price be my guide.
Isn't Channel Maker supposed to bury these if he's the good Channel Maker? I mean, I couldn't get away from that. Either going to the front or letting Channel Cat lead him into the race. Assuming, he's back in form, and we'll have some clues in terms of being able to look at him and maybe seeing a clocker report. But I mean, I just wasn't too worried about the Dubai race for him. It didn't show his form, and he's had a ton of time, and they're bothering to bring him back. If you could lock in the 5-2, I'd just do that, and I'd take him even a little shorter than that. Am I overrating the old boy?
No, because I mean, look, he appreciates a little bit of cut in the ground. Presumably, you'll have some cut on Saturday. Maybe it's not, yielding, but it'll probably be good. The only thing that gave me a little bit of pause was the quote from Mott saying, the grand plan is this race to the Sword Dancer to the Joe Hirsch. And it made me think, again, talking about different vibes and different connections and distances down the road, that maybe off of such a lengthy layoff, this would prove as a prep for a horse like this for the 2 grade 1s down the road. Unless
you think we're contradicting ourselves, Bill Mott, a trainer, while he can win off a layoff, we always talk about Mott with a plan.
Yes.
And so he is old school enough in that way, where if this is just the start of the plan, now I still think he might be good enough, and
he very well might be.
Yeah, if that narrative pushes the price to an actual 5-2, I'll still be playing. But he is definitely, to me, he sits in between. It's not like Shug, where I'm almost always gonna. Shug though will win off layoffs because he spots them so well. But he's old school enough that I don't think those ideas that we were talking about, Cox, and Pletcher and Brown necessarily apply with him. He's definitely a guy with a target. But I think we've identified some of the interesting horses there in the Bowling Green, and now we have our leaderboard. 2 players have punched their tickets into our end of season tournament, our playoffs, as it were. You finish top 2 any week, you get into this exclusive 80-runner tournament, and then the next 40 spots will be filled by tour finishers who haven't already won one. So at some point, that'll be fun to go and see what kind of tour score gets you into that. I'll do that. It's actually very easy digging to do over on the Breeders' Cup website. So we'll do that at some point. But Michael Cavana, our overall winner, congrats, 71.50, fantastic score there, running up the score in the end. Joe Salido, claps to you, great stuff, 62.80. Michael Domaville, member of the In the Money extended family, great to see your name up there. Matt Letexier, I've been saying, hopefully that's right. He advances to play on Saturday and picks up tour points. Brad Anderson, David Browning. I wonder if this one will, he has so many scores. I wonder if this one will even count. Only 40 points this week. I think that probably will improve his score just a little bit. Incredible run he's on. Loyal Sprague, David Schweiger, Pete Dressens, Chris Podratz, Mark Stovall, Aaron Reed. Good to see Matt Miller's name there advancing to competition on Saturday. And Ernie Hay Jr., who's left us some great voicemails and is always in touch. Very loyal fan of the show. Fantastic to see him in that 14th spot. Great stuff. Top 10 earned tour points. Top 14 advanced to Saturday. Top 2 punch their tickets for our finals at the end of the year. Any closing thoughts from you, Matt, on this edition of HorsePlayer Happy Hour?
Yeah, let's just hope for some better weather next Thursday afternoon, huh?
No doubt, no doubt about it. As nice as it was to get so much work done ahead of Saturday, it's much nicer when we can. I want to pop 180, 200. Those are the numbers I want to be seeing in these games. I want to raise more money for charity, and I want more people hanging out with us in the comments as well. So we'll wrap things up. I'll thank you, Matt Bernier. We'll thank producer Craig, of course. We'll thank our friends at the Breeders' Cup, especially Justin McDonald, Haley Amos, for being so fantastic to work with. We really appreciate that. Most of all, though, want to thank all of you, the listeners and viewers, for making these shows so much fun to do, especially those of you who appear in the comments. This show has been a production of the Breeders' Cup and In the Money Media. On our side, our business manager is Drew Coatney. Our chief creative officer is Jonathan Kitchen. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatal. May you win all your photos